Why, hello there. It is 113 days until Shadow of the Erdtree comes out, and this is the Elden Wait countdown, where every day I discuss the upcoming expansion to make the wait go by just a little bit faster. If you would like to join me on this journey, please subscribe to the Lore Hunter, and make sure to turn notifications on to see videos as they come out. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. As you can tell, I've pared down the presentation just a tad. I'm tiny. I'm going to go away in a moment completely. But I wanted to just do something that I do as part of my process and just bring all of you in on it. It's sort of what I call an annotated trailer, where basically I'm throwing notes and stuff as I frame through a trailer, look through it closely, and just, it's kind of a living document. It's sort of like, I think like Quelaag and Vadi use like Miro. I tend to just mark up a trailer with notes and stuff. So usually it's just something I sort of create organically, so it's messy, and this isn't going to be like a presentation as much as just like a work session, you know. And as I've said before, the Elden Wait's not a lecture, it's a conversation, so it's just me observing things, and you guys are free to comment, give your own feedback, you know, and we could just build this together. So I'm just going to dive into it, start looking at the trailer and picking stuff out, and there we go. That'll be the way to. Let's get into it.
Peggy 16.
And the first thing I wanted to point out here and make note of is that it's been speculated by some people that this is Melina. So I just wanted to point out here that looking at the outfit of the person in the trailer, you see this pattern on this long dress that goes down pretty much to the ankles. Whereas Melina's cloak, we don't see a pattern really on that. And you know, it doesn't go down as low. It's nothing that goes straight down to her ankles. So I don't think too many people at this point thought it was Melina, but I just think this is confirmation that I think this is somebody else. Could be anybody. I don't think we have enough to really make a guess at this point.
Pure and radiant, he wields love to shrive clean the hearts of men.
That's such a good line. Sounds like it could have come straight from Blasphemous. Okay. And this ends up being something where on my video software, it's just how I mark where some quotes are. So probably looks a little funny on the screen, but that's what we do.
Pure and radiant, he wields love to shrive clean the hearts of men.
Already seen that before, nothing new to add.
There is nothing more terrifying.
I mean, if you're, well, where this is like the sacrum bone, you know, this is obviously some very heavy, like, womb imagery going on here. So there's that, and just in case you're not familiar, so that's, I guess, worth noting. Alright, and one thing I want to note right off the bat here that I want to mark is I want to zoom in. Because Vadi had pointed out in a post on Twitter, I think, or maybe did a community post on YouTube, that you can see what looked to be like footprints. So the following in Miquella's footsteps thing, that could be pretty literal in some ways. We may have that sort of level of following Miquella, so that's just a cool detail. And I think while we're zoomed in, let's just take a little look around at this still. Just see what other details So you see the gravestones, stuff that we saw in that original image that came out. There's that sort of like Manus Celis looking church thing going on in the back there, which is interesting. You can see part of the baldachin in the sky. I'm probably not going to know all this stuff, but I'll point out observations. But I'm not going to take the time to note necessarily all of it. But it is kind of interesting there, though. I do think I actually want to put Manus Celis just because it's interesting to keep in mind. A lot of this stuff is keeping it in mind, even if I don't have like a theory to bring forward. It's just this is largely about observation. Alright, we have that screenshot, so we're going to continue to look around. So we have this big structure. Let's see, is there any indication of how we're accessing it? It looks like it'll be over here, coming over here to access it. Unless there's a jump for a torrent to do. Let's see that. That's very, it's a little bit hard to tell here. But you have some, more castle elements, kind of Norman looking stuff, Romanesque, but then you can kind of tell even now that the windows and stuff, and you can tell definitely with the pointiness of the spires, or the towers, that's Gothic there. So, but I think it's supposed to read as a fortified structure as well. You have the like walls or whatever out here, and then you have this. Seems like a more defensible, practical thing. But then you also have the buildings inside, which makes sense to be more Gothic. Even if it's made during Gothic times, part of the thing about Gothic is that it allows for larger windows. This is historically speaking. It allows for larger windows. The structure, you can make taller buildings, but weren't necessarily great for castles because you don't want to have really big openings for castles anyway. So Romanesque, Norman architecture works just fine for castles. And that's sort of why Norman Romanesque architecture is sort of, when you see that, it evokes medieval castle more than Gothic. Gothic castles were never actually castles. They're always sort of, to bring in some of my architectural bias, like fake. Like their function is sort of, it's for show. So this is more grounded, historical, castle architecture. And let's see, because then we see this over here. That's Gothic as hell. Over there with the buttress, and that's Gothic, because you'd have, and I didn't mean to turn this into an architectural nerding out, but I'm going to give my observations as I get them. With Gothic architecture, part of the thing is Romanesque, Norman architecture, it's being supported by the wall, and you would have engaged sort of buttresses. But with Gothic architecture, because of the structure and because of the arches, the walls want to push out, so the buttresses are to help keep the walls in by pushing them back in. And you have buttresses with Norman, but you don't have these flying buttresses where it really becomes this design element. So there's that. You have this other little tower. You can see like a little waterfall. More waterfalls. And I have to say, just like from a very conceptual level design perspective, just seeing this level of like, when I was imagining Elden Ring and what I was sort of hoping for, and we were getting little hints and us talking to Omnipotent and stuff about, what he had heard about how, sort of gravity was broken, sort of things like that. I always kind of pictured something like this fractured landscape where you have these like, almost kind of islands. And we do get that in Elden Ring, but this is really heavy on these almost like isolated plateaus with this broken land that sort of separates them and gives way to something below. Alright, so looking here. Let's just see a bridge. We'll see that multiple times. So, there's some buildings over there, very small. So maybe another little church thing. But there's that. That's the first shot sort of looked at. So there's that. All right. You didn't think we're gonna pause, not pause on something, right? All right. And I'm realizing that this will indeed. Oh, god dang it! There we go. This will indeed end up being heavy on the architecture because that's what I'm talking about. So, worth noting here, it's sort of a Gothic construction. You have this multifoil arch. We've seen a little bit of this with Carrion architecture. Interesting enough, like to tie into what we were talking about earlier, actually at Manicelis, the sort of lower down area where you have those little, I call them like gazebos. They have a little bit of this, but the multifoil arch is kind of unique to this building that we've seen in the original DLC promotional image and this trailer here. And I always wondered for that image if they were told don't put any of the cool stuff in the background, just show the shadow of the Erdtree and make sure that you don't they just Photoshop all that out. Just put some mountains. So we have this tower thing. Is that a monument? Might be get some map. And then we have this like sort of wrecked building. And for those wondering, it looks pretty Romanesque. You know, one of the ways you look, and I'm not an architectural historian, so if you are, you can certainly bring your more detailed knowledge to bear. But it's an interest of mine increasingly, and it's something I studied in school, so I have enough to probably say something wrong. But also, one of the basics, if you're just gonna look, is this sort of arch is typically like Romanesque when you see it in these games. And then if it comes to a point, it's Gothic. That's like a basic thing for anyone just wanting to look. But I think you kind of know it instinctually. That's what I think is cool about architecture, is that it sort of becomes this cultural thing where you just know. And so video games like Elden Ring and in general can use these as in these fantasy worlds, but as signifiers that sort of bring with them this level of art and history and culture that you just this is part of like media literacy is you start to understand these are saying things when it says this is older than a Gothic castle. That's sort of how that's intended to read. And From Software certainly knows architecture well enough to intentionally make those decisions. It doesn't always follow those rules. It's still a fantasy world, and we can't try to map one-to-one. I think that's folly, but it's something we can use to sort of direct our observations. And speaking of observations, we see this, it looks like draped over like maybe a piece of the Baldaquin, and we'll see this a few times. This being a piece of the Baldaquin, it was actually something that Quaylog noted, so shout out to Quaylog, who has a way better version of what I'm doing, where she gives the overview of sort of stream observations and does a similar thing. But Quaylog noted that maybe this is a piece of like the Baldaquin in the sky, and if so, that's really neat. I like that a lot. So let's let it keep going. But let's take a look. Zoom in again. We got that Manicelis looking place. We're going to see a lot of the same things. You have the shadow of the Erdtree in the background. You can very clearly see the Balticans. This is, you know, their castle structure, fortress we saw earlier. We got another little, looks like church building. You can't see it. Maybe that's a steeple. Maybe that's just something in the foreground. And then this structure is just so interesting to me because it seems like its whole function is to catch whatever is falling from the shadow of the Erdtree into this really cool looking design. Like, I just love that. It's giving so much. Like, eclipse maybe imagery, like bowl, crucible, like there's so much going on with that it could go so many different ways. And what else do we have here? You see some other buildings, like, again, what I was talking about, these plateaus. Oh, just so much adventure. So much adventure on these little plateaus, and it even goes out there, like, man. I am very happy with the scale, especially because it doesn't seem like down here is just a bunch of nothing, but there's, like, horrible swamps and stuff, which, let's go. Let's go. Deathblight Swamp. Let's do it. This bridge. You got this building, which, I think we get a better shot of it later, but, I did want to note, this building, I would say that this is more like Roman, so that would be older than Romanesque or Gothic. Sort of Roman looking to me, but it also could be like Italian, which wouldn't that be later? Like Italian, like almost like Renaissance. But I think because of the sort of the shape of the roof with the pediment, I think that is more Roman, which would predate other stuff. Got all these roots, which is really interesting. You have this really green area in the background, which it's so green, and I love that pop of color. And I think, let me grab, yeah, so that pop of green, got the image in there now. You know, I think that's where we're seeing this green. I love how lush that is. And another thing is my shout out to both Waylog for pointing it out, but also my friend Cosmos for being a creator, talking about it as this like Blackstone ruins that Cosmos has a really great video about. But interesting to see where that goes. I can't really speak on it too much right now. I'm gonna have to rewatch the video myself, but that was something Quaylog pointed out that is a theory that Cosmos has, and I think it's really worth checking out. I'm gonna have to revisit myself. This is such a great time to just enjoy all the thoughts that creators have and all the speculation about the DLC, and I'd have to say I think there's a lot of good stuff out there, and it's been great to get everybody's thoughts. Really enjoyed Smotown's analysis as well. I really enjoyed Ratatosker and Smotown. They did a little podcast on Ratatosker's channel. That's a really good video. Really fun to listen to. Really good thoughts. You can tell Smotown is just bringing the lore heat to Ratatosker, and Ratatosker just loves it. And it's just a really fun conversation with a lot of good insight. So let's turn this layer off. Get out of here. Where's it been? Alright. So I actually think this is going longer than I even thought it would. I am going to cut this up into some parts because I actually, right now, I have a breakfast date, so that's fun. So I have that going on, but I will continue. This will bleed into the next Elden Wait day, so look forward to that. Make sure to subscribe to the Lore Hunter if you want to continue this journey, specifically this process, if you want the other parts to get it as it comes out. And thanks for watching.